I lost my arm to cancer. Then I lost my wife to another woman. But nothing prepared me for the moment I saw it with my own eyes. When I watched the video Marcus sent me, my whole world cracked open. My wife of 27 years, tangled in the sheets with our neighbor, her laughter, her body, all given to someone else. I thought the worst pain was losing my arm, but I was wrong. Betrayal cuts deeper. Before I continue, please support me with a subscription and a like, it means a lot to me. I'm Daniel, 54 years old, and I've been married to my wife, Elise, 51, for 27 years. We met in our early 20s at a community theater group in Portland, Oregon, where I was a set designer and she was an aspiring actress. Her laugh could light up a room, and her passion for storytelling drew me in like a moth to a flame. We fell hard, got married, and built a life together in a cozy craftsman home on the outskirts of Seattle, raising 2 daughters who are now off at college. Life was good, until 3 years ago, when everything changed. I was diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer in my right arm. The doctors tried everything: radiation, chemo, experimental drugs. The treatments left me weak, my body a shadow of its former self, and after a grueling 18 months, they couldn't save the arm. They amputated it just below the shoulder. Now, I wear a prosthetic, a clunky piece of engineering that lets me get by but reminds me every day of what I've lost. The worst part wasn't the surgery or the pain. It was the way it fractured my connection with Elise. Our intimacy, once a cornerstone of our marriage, withered. Chemo drained me, and even when I tried to rekindle things, Elise seemed distant, her responses mechanical. I told myself it was the stress, the fear of losing me, but deep down, I wondered if she was slipping away. We live in a quiet neighborhood in Tacoma, Washington, a place where the evergreens tower over neatly trimmed lawns and the Puget Sound glints in the distance. About a year ago, new neighbors moved into a modern split-level house a few blocks away. Their names were Sophia and Marcus, not their real names, of course. They were in their early 40s, childless, and had relocated from San Francisco because Marcus's mother, who lived in nearby Olympia, was battling dementia. They wanted to be close to help her through it. Sophia was a freelance graphic designer, always dressed in vibrant scarves and chunky jewelry, with a laugh that carried across the street. Marcus was a software engineer, reserved but friendly, with a knack for fixing things. Elise and Sophia hit it off almost immediately. It started innocently enough. Elise would mention running into Sophia at the local farmer's market, or they'd grab coffee at the corner cafe. Soon, they were inseparable, spending weekends together at Sophia's place or taking long walks along the waterfront. They'd talk for hours about art, novels, and the stresses of life. Elise would come home glowing, her eyes bright in a way I hadn't seen in years. It reminded me of when we first met, when she talked passionately about a new script or a character she was developing. I was happy for her. She'd been so weighed down by my illness, and this friendship seemed to lift her spirits. I got to know Marcus a bit too. We weren't as close as Elise and Sophia, but we'd watch a Seahawks game at the local pub or tinker with his vintage motorcycle in his garage. He was a good guy, always asking how I was holding up with the prosthetic, never making it awkward. Sometimes, the 4 of us would hang out, barbecues in their backyard, board game nights. But more often, it was Elise and Sophia, lost in their own world. I didn't mind. My recovery was a slog, and I was grateful Elise had someone to lean on. Or so I thought. The lack of intimacy in our marriage gnawed at me. After the amputation, I'd pushed myself to initiate, but it was like trying to start a fire with wet wood. Elise would go through the motions, but her heart wasn't in it. I'd catch her staring out the window, lost in thought, and when I asked what was wrong, she'd smile and say, "Just tired." I started to notice how much time she was spending with Sophia. Weekends would pass with her at Sophia's house, sometimes until late in the evening. She'd come home smelling faintly of lavender, which I assumed was Sophia's perfume or some candle they'd lit while chatting. I didn't want to be the jealous husband, the one who begrudged his wife a friend, so I pushed the unease down. To stay healthy, I started walking. The chemo had ravaged my stamina, but my doctor insisted I stay active to keep my heart strong. Every afternoon, I'd strap on my prosthetic and wander the neighborhood, looping through the quiet streets, past the cedar-shingled houses and the occasional dog walker. The walks gave me time to think, to process the anger and grief of losing my arm, of losing the man I used to be. They also gave me a front-row seat to the rhythm of the neighborhood. I'd see Marcus's car gone most weekends, off to Olympia to help his mom. I'd see Elisa's bike parked at Sophia's, her helmet hanging on the handlebars. It became a pattern, one I didn't question, until yesterday. It was a crisp October afternoon, the kind where the air smells of fallen leaves and chimney smoke. I'd been walking for about an hour, my prosthetic clicking softly with each step. When I got home, the house was empty. Elise wasn't in the kitchen, where she usually tinkered with recipes, or in the living room, where she'd curl up with a book. I figured she was at Sophia's, as usual. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, when a message popped up from Marcus. "Hey Dan, you got a sec?" It read. My stomach twisted. Marcus wasn't the type to text out of the blue. I replied, "Sure, what's up?" A moment later, my phone buzzed again. I came home to grab some paperwork. Sophia's not here. I checked the cameras to see if she was napping or something. "You need to see this." My heart started pounding. Marcus had installed a full security system when they moved in, cameras in the living room, kitchen, even the bedroom. I'd helped him wire a couple of them, joking about how paranoid he was. He sent me a video file, and with trembling fingers I opened it. The footage was grainy but unmistakable. It was Sophia's bedroom, the afternoon light filtering through gauzy curtains. On the bed were two figures, tangled together, their movements intimate and unmistakable. One was Sophia. The other was Elise. I sat there, frozen, the phone slipping from my hand. The video looped in my mind, Elise, my wife of 27 years, in another woman's arms, her face flushed with a passion I hadn't seen in years. The betrayal hit me like a tidal wave, but beneath it was something worse, guilt. Had I driven her to this? Was it the cancer, the amputation, the way I'd retreated into my own pain? I thought of all the nights I'd been too tired to try, all the times I'd let her drift away without fighting for her. Elise came home an hour later, her hair damp from a shower, humming softly as she started chopping vegetables for dinner. She looked so normal, so unchanged, that for a moment I wondered if I'd imagined the video. "Good walk?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder with a smile. I nodded, my throat tight, unable to meet her eyes. The words I wanted to say, why? How long? What does this mean for us? Stuck in my chest like shards of glass. That night, I lay awake beside her, the space between us vast and unbridgeable. I thought about confronting her, about demanding answers, but what would that solve? I thought about Marcus, who was probably wrestling with the same pain, the same questions. I thought about the life we'd built, the love we'd shared, and whether it was worth salvaging. By morning, I'd made a decision, not to accuse, not to destroy, but to understand. I texted Marcus and asked him to meet me at the pub. Over a beer, we talked, not as betrayed husbands, but as two people trying to make sense of a world that had shifted beneath them. He admitted he'd suspected something for weeks but didn't want to believe it. I told him about the distance in my marriage, the way my illness had eroded us. We didn't have answers, but we had honesty, and that was a start. When I got home, I sat Elise down. Her face paled as I spoke, not accusing, but laying out what I knew, what I'd seen. She didn't deny it. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she told me she'd felt lost, unseen, for years. Sophia had been a refuge, a spark in the darkness, but she swore it wasn't love, not the way she loved me. She begged for a chance to fix things, to rebuild what we'd lost. I don't know if we can. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's broken, it's never quite the same. But I know I still love her, and that's enough to try. We're starting therapy next week. And Marcus and Sophia are doing the same. The neighborhood feels different now, quieter, as if it's holding its breath. I keep walking every day, my prosthetic clicking, my heart heavy but hopeful. Life fractures us all, but sometimes, if we're brave enough, we can piece it back together. The rain started falling as I sat across from Elise in our living room, the therapist's business card lying on the coffee table between us like a fragile truce. It was November now, a month since I'd seen that video, since my world cracked open. The Tacoma air was thick with the scent of wet cedar, and the evergreens outside our window swayed under the weight of the storm. Elise's eyes were red from crying, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater as she promised to try to rebuild what we'd lost. I wanted to believe her, but every time I closed my eyes I saw her with Sophia, their bodies entwined, and the ache in my chest flared anew. Therapy was our lifeline, or so we hoped. Our first session was scheduled for tomorrow, and I was dreading it. What do you say to a stranger about a marriage that's been your anchor for 27 years, now adrift in a sea of betrayal? I kept walking every day, my prosthetic arm clicking softly, the rhythm grounding me as I navigated the neighborhood. The streets felt different now, like a stage where the actors had forgotten their lines. I'd see Marcus's car parked at his house, or Sophia's bike leaning against their garage, and my stomach would twist. Were they fighting? Reconciling? Or had they already moved on, their marriage stronger than ours? Marcus and I met at the pub again a few days after our first talk. The place was a dive, all sticky tables and neon signs, but it felt safe, a neutral ground. He looked haggard, his usual easy smile replaced by tight lines around his mouth. Sophia wants to stay together, he said, staring into his beer. Says it was a mistake, a moment of weakness. But I keep wondering if I'm enough for her. I nodded, my own doubts mirroring his. We didn't talk about the video, but it hung between us, a shared wound. He told me they'd started couples counseling, too, and I wondered if we were all just delaying the inevitable. The first therapy session was awkward, like trying to dance with a stranger. Our therapist, Dr. Nguyen, was a soft-spoken woman with sharp eyes that seemed to see through our carefully constructed facades. Elise went first, her voice trembling as she talked about feeling invisible during my illness, how my cancer had consumed us both. I didn't know how to reach you, Daniel, she said, her eyes locked on the floor. You were so focused on surviving, and I was drowning. I wanted to argue, to say I'd been fighting for us, but the truth in her words stung. I'd retreated into my pain, leaving her to fend for herself. When it was my turn, I talked about the amputation, the way it had stripped me of my identity as a husband, a provider, a man. I admitted how much it hurt to see her with Sophia, how it made me question everything. Dr. Nguyen didn't offer solutions, just asked questions that left us raw and exposed. By the end, Elise reached for my hand, and I let her take it, but it felt like holding a ghost. Life settled into a strange rhythm. Therapy twice a week, walks every afternoon, and cautious conversations with Elise that felt like navigating a minefield. She stopped going to Sophia's, and I noticed Sophia's bike stayed in their garage most days. Marcus told me they were trying to reset, whatever that meant. But the neighborhood wasn't done with its secrets. One evening, as I was walking past the community park, I saw Sophia sitting on a bench, her vibrant scarf a splash of color against the gray dusk. She was alone, her shoulders hunched, and for a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered the video, and my sympathy curdled into something harder. I kept walking, but she called out, "Daniel, wait!" Against my better judgment, I stopped. "I owe you an apology," she said, her voice low. "What happened with Elise? It wasn't planned. It just happened." Her eyes were glassy, but I didn't care. "Why her?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. "Why my wife?" Sophia looked away, toward the sound of the Puget Sound in the distance. "She was hurting, and so was I. We found something in each other that we weren't getting at home. But it's over. I swear." I didn't know if I believed her, but her words planted a seed of doubt. Was Elise still hurting? Was therapy just a bandage on a wound that would never heal? I went home and found Elise in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup, her face soft in the warm light. She smiled when she saw me, and for a moment, I could pretend nothing had changed. But the doubt lingered, a shadow I couldn't shake. Weeks turned into months, and therapy started to feel less like a chore and more like a lifeline. Elise opened up about her fears, of losing me to cancer, of losing herself in the process. I talked about my insecurities, how the prosthetic made me feel like half a man. We cried, we fought, we laughed, and slowly, we started to find each other again. One night, she kissed me, really kissed me, and for the first time in years, it felt like us. But life has a way of testing you. In February, Marcus called me, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to talk. Now." I met him at the pub, where he slid his phone across the table. Another video, this time from a camera in their living room. It showed Elise and Sophia, sitting close on the couch, their hands brushing as they talked. It wasn't explicit, but the intimacy was unmistakable. "This was last week," Marcus said, his jaw clenched. "They said it was over." My heart sank, the fragile hope I'd built crumbling. I went home and confronted Elise, the video playing on my phone like a cruel echo of the past. She didn't cry this time, just looked at me with a mix of guilt and defiance. "We didn't do anything," she said. "We were just talking. But yes, I saw her. I needed to understand what happened, why I let it happen." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. She sighed, her shoulders slumping. "Because I knew you'd think the worst. And maybe I wasn't ready to let go of her completely." Her honesty was a knife, cutting through the trust we'd been rebuilding. I walked out, needing air, needing space. The rain was relentless, soaking me as I wandered the neighborhood, my prosthetic heavy with water. I ended up at the park, the same bench where Sophia had apologized. Marcus was there, as if drawn by the same need for answers. We didn't say much, just sat in the rain, two men bound by betrayal. "What now?" he asked finally. I didn't have an answer, but I knew I couldn't keep living in this limbo. The next day, I told Elise we needed a break. Not a divorce, not yet, but time apart to figure out what we wanted. She nodded, tears in her eyes, and agreed to stay with her sister in Portland for a while. Marcus and Sophia decided to separate, and I saw a moving truck outside their house a week later. The neighborhood felt emptier, the evergreens standing silent witness to our unraveling. I kept walking, every day, the click of my prosthetic a reminder of what I'd survived. Therapy became solo sessions, where I wrestled with my anger, my love, my fear of being alone. Elise and I talked sometimes, cautious phone calls that left me hopeful and heartbroken. She said she was working on herself, trying to understand why she'd strayed. I wanted to believe her, but trust is a slow rebuild. 6 months later, Elise came back to Tacoma. We met at the cafe where she and Sophia used to go, a neutral ground. She looked different, older, but lighter, like she'd shed a weight I hadn't seen her carrying. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said, her voice steady. "I'm asking for a chance to earn it." I looked at her, the woman I'd loved for nearly 3 decades, and saw the girl from the theater group, the one who'd made me believe in forever. We're taking it slow. Dinners, walks, therapy. The neighborhood is quieter now, the split-level house sold to a young family with a toddler who waves at me during my walks. Marcus texts sometimes, says he's dating again, trying to move forward. I don't know if Elise and I will make it, but I know we're trying, and that's enough for now. The rain still falls. The evergreens still stand, and I keep walking, one step at a time, toward whatever comes next. The Tacoma summer arrived quietly, the Puget Sound shimmering under a rare cloudless sky. It had been 9 months since Elise returned from Portland, 9 months since we sat in that cafe, her eyes pleading for a chance to rebuild what we'd nearly lost. We were still trying, navigating the fragile space between love and forgiveness, and I was learning that healing isn't a straight line, it's a winding path, full of stumbles and small victories. My walks continued, the click of my prosthetic arm a steady metronome, grounding me as I pieced myself back together. Our days had settled into a cautious rhythm. Elise and I cooked dinner together most nights, chopping vegetables side by side, our movements tentative but familiar. We went to therapy every Thursday, where Dr. Nguyen guided us through the hard conversations about Sophia, about my cancer, about the years we'd let slip through our fingers. Some sessions left us raw, others hopeful, but each one felt like a step towards something real. We started small traditions too, Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, where we'd buy fresh peaches and argue over which stall had the best coffee. Evening walks along the waterfront, where the salt air loosened our tongues. These moments weren't a cure, but they were a bridge, spanning the chasm that had opened between us. I still thought about Sophia sometimes, though the split-level house was now home to a young couple with a toddler who rode a tricycle up and down the sidewalk. Marcus had moved to Seattle, chasing a new job and a fresh start. He texted me occasionally, sharing updates about a woman he met, a teacher with a laugh that reminded him of better days. "You and Elise holding up?" he'd ask, and I'd reply with vague optimism, not wanting to jinx the progress we'd made. The neighborhood felt lighter without the weight of our shared history, but I carried the scars, a quiet reminder of how close we'd come to breaking. One afternoon, as I walked past the community park, I saw Elise sitting on the bench where Sophia had once apologized. She was alone, a book open on her lap, her hair catching the sunlight. I paused, struck by how much she looked like the woman I'd fallen for all those years ago, back when we were just kids with big dreams and no idea what life would throw at us. She looked up, sensing me, and smiled, a real smile, not the guarded one she'd worn for so long. "Join me?" she called, patting the bench. I sat beside her, the prosthetic resting awkwardly between us. "Good book?" I asked, nodding at the novel. She laughed, a sound that still made my chest ache. "It's terrible, actually. But I'm too stubborn to quit." We sat in comfortable silence, watching a group of kids chase a soccer ball across the grass. After a while, she spoke, her voice soft but steady. "I know I hurt you, Daniel. I'll carry that forever. But being here, with you, trying, it's the first time in years I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be." Her words hit me hard, not because they erased the pain, but because they felt true. I'd spent so long wrestling with the what-ifs. What if I hadn't gotten sick? What if I'd fought harder for her? What if Sophia had never moved here? But sitting there, with the summer breeze rustling the evergreens, I realized those questions didn't matter as much as the one in front of me. Could I love her enough to keep going? The answer wasn't simple, but it was clear. I reached for her hand, my fingers brushing hers, and she squeezed back, her grip warm and sure. That night, we cooked salmon with lemon and dill, a recipe we perfected over the months. As we ate, Elise told me about a community theater production she wanted to audition for, a small role in a play about second chances. Her eyes lit up as she talked, and I saw the spark that had drawn me to her all those years ago. "You should go for it," I said, meaning it. "You'll be incredible." She blushed, then reached across the table, her hand resting on mine. "Will you come watch me?" she asked. I nodded, my throat tight. Wouldn't miss it. The weeks that followed were a quiet kind of magic. Elise got the part, and I'd sit in on rehearsals sometimes, watching her transform into someone else under the stage lights. It reminded me of our early days, when we'd stay up late painting sets and dreaming about the future. Therapy continued, but the sessions felt less like a battle and more like a conversation, a way to keep the bridge between us strong. We weren't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, nights when I'd wake up and wonder if trust could ever be whole again. But we were honest, and that was enough. One evening, as we walked along the waterfront, the sun sinking into the sound in a blaze of orange and pink, Elise stopped and turned to me. "I love you, Daniel," she said, her voice steady, her eyes locked on mine. "Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Every day." I looked at her, the woman who'd broken my heart and helped me mend it, and felt something settle inside me, a peace I hadn't known I was searching for. "I love you too," I said, and for the first time in years, the words didn't carry a question mark. We stood there, the waves lapping at the shore, the evergreens whispering in the distance. My prosthetic clicked as I shifted my weight, a reminder of what I'd lost, but also of what I'd survived. Life had fractured us, tested us, but we'd chosen to piece it back together, not as it was, but as something new, something stronger. I didn't know what the future held, more plays, more walks, more summers by the Sound, but I knew we'd face it together, one step at a time. As we walked home, Elisa's hand in mine, I looked at the neighborhood around us, the houses glowing with warmth, the stars beginning to peek through the dusk. The path ahead wasn't certain, but it was ours, and that was enough. I kept walking, the click of my prosthetic fading into the night, a quiet promise that we'd keep going, no matter what.